The election countdown is on, and a number of down-ballot candidates appear to be dodging the vice president. Some vulnerable members of her party are even drawing connections with former President Trump in some new ads. Let's bring in Pete Seat. He is a GOP strategist. Pete, they say politics makes strange bedfellows, and that's happening in places like Pennsylvania, where Bob Casey, the Democrat Senate candidate, is tying himself to Donald Trump.
Yeah, Bob Casey is doing it in Pennsylvania. Sherrod Brown is doing it in Ohio. Tammy Baldwin is doing it in Wisconsin. Two of those, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, obviously critically important states to both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in getting to 270 electoral college votes. But what's so interesting to me about this is the issues that they're focused on in these ads. Bob Casey is talking about trade, Tammy Baldwin about Made in America, Sherrod Brown about immigration and the border. They could run ads on just the issues themselves, but instead they decide to invoke Donald Trump, use images of Donald Trump in these ads. They are breaking up with Kamala Harris and flirting with Donald Trump because their political prospects depend on it.
Is this why Vice President Kamala Harris is just so angry these days? Because her campaign of joy has now left the building? She's now campaigning with anger. And now the funny part is she's still saying the same thing over and over again.
And when we fight, we win. And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government shouldn't be telling her what to do. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do. But I call an opportunity economy so that every American has an opportunity to own a home, to build wealth, and to start a business. So every American has the opportunity to own a home, to build wealth, to start a small business. Should never again stand behind the
You know what could make that worse? Is if the people behind her and those who are cheering for her are also the same people in all of these videos. Now, I'm not saying that they are, but it wouldn't be impossible given the fact that they bus supporters from spot to spot. It's also a fact that looking for Harris supporters is not an easy task, especially if you compare them to the number of Trump supporters.
Who's voting for Kamala Harris here? Absolutely no.
No, not possible.
There's nothing she can do or say for us to change our mind.
Donald Trump said a lot of things his first time around that terrified me. The campaign that the Democrats ran was that Donald Trump hates us. I felt safe, though, in the country when Trump was in office. I don't feel safe right now with Kamala in office. So, I mean, that to me speaks more.
And I will say, as we put the story together, I was hard-pressed to find someone who was voting for Kamala Harris in the Lebanese community in Dearborn.
That's not a good look for Kamala. And you also have to consider how Democrats are taking this. Many of them also believe that there's no chance that she does well enough in these swing states to change the outcome of this election. One swing state that's now moving toward Donald Trump is Michigan. Multiple polling results are now showing that Donald Trump has a real edge over Kamala Harris here. And to add to that, Democratic Mayor Amer Ghalib recently honored the former president as he visited his city of Hamtramck.
Mr. President, on behalf of the city of Hamtramck, and we would like to present you a certificate of appreciation for visiting our city. And I would like to call the three elected officials, if you don't mind, to join me to hand you this certificate, please. It's going to be historic for our city.
Mayor Ghalib, who is also Muslim, says that it's time to end the disconnect with the Republican Party, and that Donald Trump's visit showed a lot of respect and appreciation for their community. Who would have thought that respect would gain him a lot of support? Well, anybody with a brain would probably understand that respect begets respect, something that voters have felt from the former president. It's got guys like Don Lemon stumped because he's finding it hard to find supporters of Kamala Harris in the swing states.
Yes. You're talking to a lot of voters, and I will just say that you texted me right around the Democratic convention, and you said, I am talking to people, and Kamala Harris has a problem with black men.
Yeah, and I told the campaign I did not hear from them. I mean, who am I for them to get back to me? But there's a problem. And look, I went from battleground state to battleground state. When they invited me to the convention, I didn't just want to fly there. I said, I'm going to go and talk to voters in battleground states, and I did. It was not curated. I went up to people just doing man on the street. Who are you going to vote for? Black men. And time after time after time, they said, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Now, their reasons why. They said, because most of the time they said, well, for economic reasons, right? Or because he gave me a stimulus check. And I had to correct them over and over and tell them where that stimulus check came from a Democratic Congress and from Nancy Pelosi. And that Donald Trump actually held the check up so that his name could be put on the check. So they think they got the check directly from him. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has given 1 or 2 stimulus checks as well, but they seem not to know and understand that. You can vote for whoever you want to vote for, but the reasons that you're going to vote for them, I think that they should be accurate and factual, and you should know why you're supporting someone.
Don Lemon makes it sound as if black men are voting based on just money alone. But it's not just black men. Men in general are tired of the Democratic Party, with many people saying absolutely no to Kamala Harris. The VP is well aware of this, and this is what she said when confronted with this fact.
Donald Trump leads, particularly among men, by 16 points right now. Why is that, and why do you think there is a disconnect for you with men right now?
Well, let me tell you can look at this audience and you can see that there are people of every background and gender who are showing up by the thousands. And I think it is because they know I intend to be a president for all Americans. And that is how I'm campaigning to earn the vote of every American, not only about their gender, but about their geographic location and unburdened by who they may have voted for in the past.
Now, I'm not even going to comment on that because she pretty much answered with a whole lot of nothing. The reality is that many look at Donald Trump and they see an actual person, someone that they feel like they could kind of talk to without receiving the exact same canned response over and over. Kamala Harris, though, her and her campaign has made her look like a puppet, one that only works with either a teleprompter or a script. It's no wonder Democrats in swing states are now aligning themselves with Donald Trump.
More than 70% of people
that is
tell
about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become, but listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances.
I had to stop the clip because she was mostly just talking about Trump. She seems to be holding her own just fine, right, Don? Can somebody check the teleprompter on Kamala? It looks like she's on the wrong page because Bear was talking about something completely unrelated to Donald Trump here. And I love how he said that he didn't know what the heck she was talking about, because that was my reaction when I saw this. How are you somehow making this about Donald Trump when you've been in office for the last 3.5 years? And before we even get to these clips of Harris sinking her own campaign down the drain, listen to what Bret Baier had to say about this interview. Check this out. And guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. Don't forget to check us out over on our Patreon community, where we release content commercial free, and I release exclusive videos that unfortunately I can't share here. Hit the link, join us over on Patreon right now. Let's get started.
You know, kicker in football, they call a timeout right before he's going to kick the field goal. They're icing the kicker. So we were supposed to start at 5 p.m. This was the time they gave us. Originally, we were going to do 25 or 30 minutes. They came in and said, well, maybe 20. So it was already getting whittled down. And then the vice president showed up about 5:15. We were pushing the envelope to be able to turn it around for the top of the 6 o'clock. So that's how it started. And I could tell when we started talking that she was going to be tough to redirect without me trying to interrupt. I did this with President Obama. At one point, I just said, Mr. President, I know you like the filibuster. I just didn't even have the chance to sometimes redirect in those ways. I had a lot of other questions.
So she's running for president and she runs late for a schedule that she gave herself. What? Yeah, I know. This interview started as well as many of us thought that it would. Don Lemon needs some new eyeglasses and maybe even a hearing aid because Kamala Harris did not hold her own in this Fox interview. Not at all. There were moments where you saw her visibly triggered by some of these questions that were centered around the rhetoric against Donald Trump. It's no secret that they've contributed to the assassination attempts of the former president. They've done it through the violent rhetoric and the language that they've pushed on mainstream media. But here's what happens when she's confronted with the truth.
In fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Come on, Brett, don't show her the truth. She doesn't like that. She's more accustomed to propaganda. And that's what they've pushed on Donald Trump all these years. Does anybody here agree with Kamala Harris that Trump is the guy who puts Americans last? The one who demeans the people of this country? And you could see how pissed off she got when she got fact-checked right to her face. Because these journalists asked Donald Trump about this enemy within talk. But if we go by these past few years, we can confirm that Donald Trump has been investigated thoroughly by the current administration. Also, the current administration is guilty of locking people up for their criticizing them, for saying things that go against their narrative. Kamala Harris is again projecting. They're the ones who worked with social media companies to deplatform and silence individuals from saying things during their pandemic. And this is also why they don't like Elon Musk, because many people believe that he's returned our freedom of speech. It's pretty hard to spread misinformation when you've got community notes on X, which shows you that there's an enemy within, those who want to stifle our freedoms. And it's pretty evident with the federal government. I mean, you can see it in different government agencies. So her trying to spin this around to say that Donald Trump is calling us the enemy is misleading. Now, what's really amusing is that Trump's social media team posted this interview in full and called it their latest ad, which is honestly true because she self-destructed throughout this entire discussion. Now, this brings me to one of the most important parts of this interview. Kamala Harris's team is trying to piss off Donald Trump by calling him mentally unstable. Bear, on his end, didn't let this go because we've had President Joe Biden for the last 3.5 years. And with his debate performance on CNN, he proved that he was the one who was suffering from mental lapses. Look at how Kamala Harris reacts when she's challenged on this particular fact.
Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump.
The significance of that.
Call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out.
I guess Biden seemed fine for her. Other than that, she also seemed to be okay with the border crisis. She's given a simple, canned answer for this issue. It's all Donald Trump's fault for killing their border bill.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but do you, just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
They know that to stay in office, they have to stick to the person who's most probably going to win this year's election. Now, speaking of Donald Trump and his relatability, I did a video where it shows just how connected he is to the American people. It's got footage that you will never see on mainstream media, so make sure you guys watch that video right after this one, all right? Now, as always, appreciate you guys being here and hitting the like button. You guys are amazing. I'll see y'all next time.